Okay, Miranda, are we all set?
I think we're set.
Cool. Okay. Hi, everybody. So my name is Kayla Knoll. I am with the DePaul Career Center. I am the career advisor for the Business Entrepreneurship and Consulting Career Community. So the Career Center is hosting this event in partnership with CNA. So we've had a wonderful speaker come in to help train you all on Excel. It should be really a great presentation workshop today. If you need materials, please just put your email in the chat. We'll make sure to send those out as we go forward. But without further ado, our wonderful speaker today is Miranda Vela, who started her career with CNA Insurance in June of 2017 after completing her accounting degree at DePaul. So she began her full-time work as an accounting rotational business associate. She's held this position in the investment reporting, life and group accounting, treasury, capital markets, and treasury. And then Miranda is currently a senior financial analyst at CNA's treasury team. Alongside her colleague who's also here, Denise, and other CNA colleagues, Miranda's working to start an employee resource group, ABLE at CNA, to promote awareness and create support for those impacted by physical and mental disabilities. During her time at DePaul, she was a member of Beta Alpha Psi and completed internships with Jackson National Asset Management and UI Labs. And Miranda's favorite function within Excel is sums ifs and using pivot tables to simplify data. So outside of the office, Miranda enjoys taking long walks with her senior chihuahua, cooking new recipes, and studying to sit for the Certified Treasury Professional, or the CPT exam, at the end of the year. So thank you so much, Miranda, for being with us, and I'll let you take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I see some familiar names. So some of you might have attended our session in the fall, which was actually in person. So this is our first attempt at this workshop virtually, so bear with us. So before we get into introducing the rest of my colleagues that are with me, just wanted to give a little overview of who CNA is. So everyone can see my screen okay, right? And hear me okay? Yeah, cool. Okay, so CNA Insurance, who are we? We provide protection to over 1 million businesses and professionals around the world. We are currently the 8th largest US commercial and property casualty insurance company. And that might not mean a lot to a lot of people. I know it didn't to me. So basically what that means is our customers include people that are in construction, manufacturing, technology, financial institutions, healthcare, professional services, things like that, small businesses. And we have locations throughout the US, Canada, Europe, and Asia. So yes, all right, so introduction. So Kaylin was so kind as to already give mine. But yes, I am a DePaul alum, graduated with my degree in accounting and started at CNA Insurance in 2017. Yes, 2017, time flies. And I'm currently on the treasury team and the cash accounting side, which is just a fancy word for basically ledgerizing all of our cash movement. So I'm going to pass the mics off to my 3 beautiful helpers here today. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Ethan to give a brief bio and introduction.
Hey guys, how you doing? My name is Ethan Altmeyer. I graduated from the University of Iowa, go Hawkeyes, last year, May 2019. I graduated with a finance and business analytics major, and I actually interned at CNA in summer 2018 and then started full-time after graduation. Started off in corporate accounting, and now I'm in the investment operations division.
All right, Tristan.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tristan Geiser. I use he, him pronouns. Like Ethan, I am a proud Hawkeye. I graduated in 2017 with a degree in finance and management. My career at CNA started in 2016 when I was an accounting intern. I had no clue what the heck corporate accounting was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Still kind of don't know what I want to do. Anyway, I had a fantastic experience in my internship at CNA. I just loved the people there. And I was fortunate enough to be hired on to start full-time in the Accounting Rotational Business Associate program in August of 2017. So during that time, I started out in corporate accounting, where I did like accounting for our corporation and stuff that just kind of didn't fit into a specific bucket, and kind of realized, maybe not my thing. Then I moved on to more of an operational role where I oversaw operations, and again, I was kind of like, not quite my thing. And then CNA, again, was gracious enough to, kind of take a chance on me, and they put me into this kind of learning and development consulting role, and I've been there ever since, and I love it. That's a little bit about me.
And lastly, Denise.
My name is Denise Morel. I've been at CNA Insurance since 2017 after graduating with my accounting degree from DePaul. I started out in the Accounting Rotational Business Associate program with Miranda and Tristan, and went into corporate accounting, then reinsurance ops, and statutory reporting. I'm currently a senior accountant on the Life and Group accounting team. Outside of my time at CNA, I'm studying for my first CPA exam at the end of September. I also have my little dog over here sitting in his bed, so we hang out a lot. Yeah, and I like reading and just enjoying time with friends and family.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. All right. So moving on. Whew, that makes my face nice and bright. So our agenda. So we're going to go through some principles of Excel, some formula structure, troubleshooting, and then all of our like actual workbook activities. So in way of like what to expect, I would suggest having that Excel workbook that Emily and Kaylin sent over open, because we're going to kind of be working through it together, and I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between PowerPoint and that workbook. So at any point, if you have any questions, feel free to chat, raise your hand. If I can see you, get our attention, I'm happy to stop. So the goal today is to take you from here to here. Much formula, much success. We're going to rock it. All right, and this was my PSA. Don't hesitate to ask questions. I love questions. It's how you learn. So don't be shy. I'm sure if one of you are wondering about something, 10 other people probably have the same thought. So, all right. So here is kind of a good view of the toolbox that I like to think of within Excel. So we're actually going to go through quite a few of these and even dabble into the veteran column. But this is really like shows a very well-rounded knowledge of Excel. I can't actually do all this. I am very much like not a pro yet, but just kind of gives a good reference point. And Emily, I think that you wanted me to pause here, correct? Perfect.
Just launched a
all right,
poll.
So we're gonna do a little poll. Yeah, great. So interesting. Get to see like the live action here. So one of the reasons that we're asking about your operating system, just disclaimer, I'm using a decently old version of Excel on Windows. So Tristan's laughing because if you work at CNA, you know the woes of our outdated Excel. So be patient. It might not look the same as you, especially between like Mac and Windows. It can look a little funky, but it's pretty much all the same. So it might just take us a few minutes to direct you in the correct way. But it looks like we've got like pretty much split between operating system, and it looks like a lot of you are sitting in like the beginner to intermediate category. Awesome. Good info. All right. All right. So moving on. So a few just PSAs before we get started. And these are also just kind of for your reference to have. If you ever run into an issue where you can't really figure out what's wrong with your formula. It can be really, really frustrating. So here's just a few ways that you can kind of troubleshoot. I put in here, like, remember Google is your friend. That is my end all be all if I cannot figure something out. But there is a feature in your toolbar where you can actually like error check your formula right here. And it will like walk through and help identify the part of the formula that maybe isn't formatted correctly and is causing your error. So this was a very helpful tool when I first started in Excel. And then you can also evaluate the formula. And this will actually like just show you way more details in the formula build and kind of give you like live feedback of what the result would be. So we'll get more into that when we're actually in Excel. But all right, and then next, so formula lingo. So references within formula. So these can be two different ways. They can be by words, and that means that I'm physically typing in text in a formula. I'm telling Excel to find anything with Miranda, and I'm actually like typing that in quotes here. And it feels smart enough to be able to search text that way. However, that's not the most efficient or dynamic way to utilize Excel. And so for purposes of this workshop, we're not going to do that. We're going to use the references within the formula by cells. So this will make much more sense when we're in Excel. But basically, this is going to be more dynamic. It can be updated much more easily. For example, here we have a VLOOKUP, and the reference is my name. If I had actually typed in Miranda Vela and used this formula in multiple places, it would be a lot harder to change that search parameter rather than if I had just referenced one cell where I can change that once. So more to come on that. And then lastly, before we dive in, relative and absolute references within the formula. So this is like a little secret, but it can be really, really helpful. So you'll see here, the relative has no dollar signs in front of it. And what that means is when you change the formula, it's going to change the range that it's reading. Whereas if you put these little dollar signs in front of it, it changes it to like a constant, to where if you copy and paste this formula, it will always reference column A. So that will make more sense again, and I'll make sure to point that out when we're actually in the workbook. Are there any questions that I can answer now? All right, and if anyone has questions, a reminder to like use the chat function. Ethan, Tristan, and Denise will be able to help you. All right, so first point of touch with Excel, pivot. So what do pivots do? They help us organize and summarize selected data in a spreadsheet or database to obtain a very specific view that we're looking for. And this pivot table is not actually changing the data itself. It's just kind of organizing it in a fashion that is much more digestible. So, for example, you have all of this data here. And let's say I want to see total assets by company. It would be really hard to interpret. But with a pivot table, you can summarize all this data by company to see their total market value. So that takes us to our very first exercise. So everyone's able to see my Excel? Yeah, cool. Okay, so our first exercise here is going to be basically doing what I just showed you in my PowerPoint. So you're going to create a pivot table to show the market value by each company. So how this workbook is laid out is you'll notice that there's exercises and then a data set, exercise, data set. So in this situation, to build the pivot table, we're going to utilize this data on the pivot and count data tab. They're all color coordinated. And so what I want to see is the aggregate market value of each company. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by creating a pivot table. And you can do that by selecting on the Insert tab and navigating to Pivot Table. And what this is going to ask you is, it's going to ask you to provide the data that you actually want to feed into this. And so the data you want to analyze. In this case, it is this. So we're going to select rows or columns A through D. And if you want a really easy way to do that, you can hold down Shift. You can click on A, hold down Shift, and arrow over. And then once you have that, if you're really good, you can hold down Shift Control and hit the down key. Oh, I just made a mockery of myself and messed it up, you guys. Oh, wow. Well, okay. There you go. We'll just do this to really, there we go. I did it. Nope, I didn't. We'll get there. I don't know why my short trick is not working. So basically, we're going to highlight all this data, you guys. All right. And once you have it all highlighted, I'm sure you guys probably already do because I'm being super clunky. I lose all of my abilities as soon as someone watches me. I don't know what it is. Okay. So once you have your data selected, it should auto to existing worksheet, which is where we were. So you're going to hit OK. And then it's going to create this like little widget form. And you're going to see to the right, you're going to have a field list. And what this is Excel is basically reading those column headers, and it's asking you how you want this data formatted. So immediately I'm thinking I care about, we want to know the market value, right? So you'll see there's a report filter section, a column label section, a row label section, and a value section. Value is typically always going to be like the numeric thing that you're trying to sum. So in this situation, my first step would be, I know that I want the market value, the dollars in the value area. And so you're going to see here, it's going to show the sum of everything. But then I don't want the sum of everything. I want the sum by company. So I'm actually going to take the company, and personally, I'm going to put it in the row label area. And so what this shows is the market value by company. And so pivot tables, super easy to play around with. This is like a really, really simple version, but if you want to play around even more, it's as easy as just like dragging and dropping. So anything you put in the column label is going to give you more context. And as you can see, that's a really clunky thing to put there because it's really, really long. But like a better view would be like if my manager came up to me and said, okay, great, you gave me market value by company, but I want more. And she said, show me the market value of each security type by legal entity or by company. This would be that view. So as you can see, it's like a really, really powerful way to be able to play with data really quickly and get, you know, very in-depth results. There's also functionality within to do different sort options. So if I wanted to see the largest to smallest, you can do that. There's a whole bunch of different, so you can show values as like percentages of totals, summarize values by averages, et cetera. So there's a lot of functionality that pivot tables offer. Super, super great. I used to hate them. Now they're like my absolute favorite. So Denise is nodding because she feels the same. All right, are there any questions on pivot table? Yes. I think you're muted.
Yes, I am. So on my computer, the labels for the categories are a little different. I have values, but would access categories be the same as row labels?
I'm not sure. Try dragging it in there and see what happens. Are you on are you on Mac? Are you on like an iOS? Or are you on Windows?
Yeah, I think I'm using a Mac. I must have mixed up that.
That makes sense. Then I would say that it's probably going to show up, but I would play around. I mean, it's super easy to just drag and drop and see what you get. Any other questions?
What I got was a sum of market value graph, row labels, and next to it is sum of market value. Is that what you have? Looks
Sure
like,
is.
I think we have the same thing.
Good, good, you did it.
Yeah. Yeah, yes.
Yay!
Miranda, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I
I
sure
just-
was.
I wasn't sure if that was on my end or yours, so I
Saw
gave you
my
a couple
mouth.
seconds before I said something.
You guys, you know that senior chihuahua I was telling you about? He has a slip disc and he has been putting me through it this week. So I'm like exhausted. So thank you, Tristan. All
Absolutely.
right. So count functions. So this is a super easy formula. There's a few iterations that I often use. The most used is going to be the count if, which is what we're going to actually practice. But I just put a few of the different options in this PowerPoint. So first, you can just use count. This is going to return the number of numerical values that you're counting in the range. Count A is going to count like non-blanks. So let's say you have a data range with blank fields. You don't want to count those. That would be a workaround. Count blank is going to do the total opposite. And then count if, this function is going to return the number of cells in the range that satisfy a given criteria. So whatever logical test or value that we set. And so this is really useful to slim down data sets and allows like the criteria elements that the other count functions do not. So anytime I say range, you can think of that as the area that Excel is searching to meet certain parameters. So I'll go ahead and jump in here. So what we're doing here, we're going to use the count if function. And I have like the formula actually written out in this little orange box in that workbook. And we're going to find the number of securities by company. So what do I mean by that? So I want to know for each company, A, B, C, D, how many individual securities, so each line is representing a security, they have. So what we're going to do is we're going to start building the formula. And you can see here, as soon as I type that in, I'm getting a few options. And you can actually navigate through those. And if you either click it or hit tab, it will auto-populate. So you can see here, it's already asking me for my range. So we know that that is the range that we want Excel to search. So here, I'm just going to do column A. And you remember in my earlier slides, me talking about constant versus relative. This would be an example of relative. So if I drag this formula, there's the risk that the data, it could start reading column B if I were dragging this to the right. So I like to make my references absolute so they don't change on me. So what I'm telling Excel now is you're looking in that first column A, and it wants to know the criteria of what it's counting. So in this situation, we want to know the count of everything for company A. So I'm actually going to click that cell, B3, and it will actually read that. So this was what I was talking about, where I could also type in A like that. But then what I would have to do, and I'll show you guys, is when I drag the formula down, it's still referencing A. Whereas, if I do the better thing here and reference the formula, I can then drag the formula down and it will update the reference to the correct company. So this is going to show me my count of securities by company. So hopefully you all are able to get similar numbers. If there's any questions, use that chat function.
I think we have a question, Miranda.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I clicked column A, but I didn't get the same information that you have in your column.
So do you have the range AA? So it's just going to be hitting equal, navigating.
I got the countif part, but what do I have to select?
Okay, yep. So countif, and then it's going to ask you for range. So when you do that, you can actually just click on the whole column, and it will properly update.
That's what I did.
And then you're gonna.
I clicked the whole column, but it didn't.
Okay, and then did you also then come back and then for the criteria, reference B3?
The entire column C is the criteria.
No, so your range is going to be this data, and your criteria is going to be company A. So I'm just referencing that cell.
Okay. I think I got it.
Awesome.
Did you get
Anyone
9544? Yes, you did.
Yes.
And then we drag it down and we have all our numbers.
Sure do. All right. Lovely. Okay. There's no other questions, nothing on IM? No? Cool. All right, we're gonna go ahead into VLOOKUP. So VLOOKUP is basically short for vertical lookup. This is a built-in Excel function that's designed to work with data that's organized in columns. So for a specified value, the function basically finds or looks up that specific value in a column of data, and it's going to return the corresponding value from another column. That sounds like absolute nonsense. That's like the textbook formula definition. It will make more sense. So remember, when we're building this, there are certain limitations. So this formula can only read data from left to right. And what that means is if you want to put your column in the far, or your formula in the far right column, not going to let you do that because it has to read left to right. And then another limitation is that if you have a data set where there may be multiple criteria that will be met by a VLOOKUP, it's important to remember that it's going to actually return the first instance of that. This will make more sense once we get into some ifs, but yes, all right. So going back in our workbook, if everyone navigates to the VLOOKUP tab. So what we're going to be doing here, so you'll see there's actually two different tabs of data. So for this first little exercise, we're going to use that first data tab. So what this data set is, this is an example of data that I would be touching and utilizing in my day-to-day work. So this is basically just a chart showing, you know, whatever you want it to be, say financial results, money, whatever, quarterly results by our different lines of business or legal entities. And it's showing a quarterly view by year and then grand total. So great, this is a lot of data. Let's say I'm being asked to find, what am I saying here? Find segment B in Q4 2019. So segment B in Q4 2019. Wait, Q4. I did say that, right? Yeah, this guy. All right. Okay, so this is kind of a limited data set, so it might kind of seem silly that we're building a formula, but there are situations where you might have like thousands of rows of data and you want a really quick example to say like in this period, you know, I just want to know segment fees, profit, et cetera. So this would be a way that you can do that. So VLOOKUP, the lookup value, you're going to see here. This is asking for like what Excel is actually going to search. So we want to know only segment B. So again, we can use this cell as a reference. It's going to be A8. And then the next step here is asking for the table array. So what this means is it wants to know basically the range of the data that we're searching. So in this case, it's going to be columns A through M. And then the next thing it's going to ask is the column index number. What this represents is it's asking, okay, in this range, what's the number of the column that you want me to return the data? So for this one, and there's actually a little trick to this, when you're actually highlighting the data set in a VLOOKUP, Excel is nice and it will actually count for you. So you see like where my highlighter is, it's moving from 11 to 12 to 13. That's the actual count of the column. So the value that I'm trying to return is Q4 2019, segment B. So I want column 13. And then this last, it's going to ask for true or false. I always use exact match. There's very few cases where I've used approximate match. So it's a pretty good rule of thumb to always use that. So let's see what we get here. All right, so it was smart enough to say, you are searching for segment B data in this data range, and you want me to spit out whatever that corresponding value is in the 13th column. Let's say then I wanted to see, I don't know, a different one. If you actually change the column index number in here, it would actually change the value that you returned. So my data range did not change. I'm still pulling in data from A through M, but instead of returning the value from column 13, I said return it from column 11. So I probably got that 15, yep. So that's an example of like a very quick VLOOKUP. I'll be honest that I don't use VLOOKUPs that often anymore, and that's why I'm not spending a lot of time on them. I usually will replace them with like sum ifs or index matches, which we're going to learn later. All right, and then we have one more example on the VLOOKUP. So let's say I have a mass registry of employee data, and I'm trying to quickly find for Kai Baldwin what his work anniversary is. So if you look on this data tab, you'll see all of the names of employees, their positions, and their work anniversary. So I'm interested in searching data in column A and returning the value in column B. So we're going to go ahead and navigate to VLOOKUP. My lookup value is going to be cell A13, which is the name Kai Baldwin. My table array is going to be columns A through C. You can go ahead and highlight either the exact data set or the columns. It should not make a difference in this case. And then the column index number, so the data that I want to return sits in the third column. So here is where I'm going to say, give me that data in column 3, and I want an exact match. And there we go. So it's going to give me, and let me check. Let's see here. (8/1/2016). It works. Any questions on VLOOKUPs?
Someone in the chat got an NA, so do we want to talk about how we fix that?
Ooh, yes, the dreaded NA. I think I even have a slide on that. Yes, that means lookup not found. That's a very sad thing to get. So let's troubleshoot that. So if there was a situation where the data that you are looking up is not included in the data set you are building the formula to read from, it's going to give you an NA. So in this case, I just made mine do that because I misspelled his name. So what Excel is trying to do now is search for Kai without an I in this data set where it just doesn't exist. So Excel's like, nice try, NA. Another thing that could cause this is if you do not select the entire table array. So let's say I'm searching here, I go in, I filtered data, sorry, 1 second. All right. So if I were to go in and select the data set, like here, 3, it's going to also say NA because the data, you are not telling Excel the full extent of where the data is. Oh my goodness. So I would check that you are actually including the full data set in your VLOOKUP. Hopefully that will fix the problem. Also, I, for some reason, cannot see the chat function from my view when I'm like sharing. So if anything pops up, stop me. All right. So I totally lost my place in the PowerPoint. Give me 1 second. No. Nope. Nope. My PowerPoint said not today. What the heck did I do? Tristan, you're good at these things. Help me.
What? I'm sorry, I was looking at the chat. What are you trying to do?
I don't know. It keeps like freezing when I try to go into reading view. I also hate our PowerPoint.
Go to click slideshow.
The slideshow will take both my screens. It's also not letting me do that either.
Oh wait, what are you doing? Wait. Are you try Alt? See if you can Alt Tab to the presentation screen, perhaps. I have no idea.
Oh, okay, this is weird, right? I swear I'm not this technology challenged. Okay, guys. We're just gonna improvise here with a tiny screen. All right. So some if and some if. So these allow users to sum multiple instances of a criteria in a desired range. So this is unlike VLOOKUP. Some ifs are basically the same thing, but it can just take in multiple conditions. And what I mean when I say multiple instances, oh my gosh, my whole computer just gave up. Okay, what I mean when I say multiple instances is, let's say that I had a data set where I wanted to return anyone who, let's see, any senior, and I want to know their work anniversary. A VLOOKUP would search this data set and it would return this work anniversary as the only one. This is a bad example, but it kind of works. Whereas the sum if would be able to say, hey, there's multiple instances where a position is senior, and it could like aggregate those results. Date is a bad example because you can't sum a date, but it will make more sense in a minute. So our data set that we're going to be using for this is going to be this little tab here. And what this is going to show is a dummy claim number, a policy type, the state and city that that policy is in, and then a dollar amount. So for example, if I wanted to know the total amount, the total dollar amount for all policies in Missouri, and I used the VLOOKUP, my answer would be $5. I'm going to give it away. Right. So this is using a VLOOKUP. And this is not going to give you a view of a full like summation. I'm looking for total dollars. So instead of doing a VLOOKUP, we want to use a SUMIF, because what a SUMIF is going to do is exactly that. It's going to sum the values if they meet a certain criteria. So first, we're going to do the most simple version of a SUMIF. So we want to find the total dollar value for Kansas City. So, and you'll notice these little orange cells that are above. I actually put these in here so we can utilize them in our formula build to avoid using text. So we're going to go ahead and start. So equals SUMIF. And the first thing it's going to ask is for your range. So this is not to be confused with the range of items that we want to sum. You'll notice that there's a sum range, which is later. This range is asking, what area of the data do you want Excel to search for your specified criteria? And so in this case, I care about the city. So I'm going to say search column D. So just click on that column. You're going to search column D. And my criteria is going to be Kansas City. And then lastly, it's asking for the sum range. So this is where Excel's saying, okay, great, you gave me the range to look and make sure if anything says Kansas City, then I'm paying attention to it. Now what's the range of things that you want me to smash together? So in this case, that's going to be tricky, column E. That's where our dollar values are. So what I should get here, $13. And let's see, I like to prove myself. So we've got Kansas City, and then I think Kansas City, $13. So my formula is correct. And then we're going to do one more SUMIF, except this time our range is going to be in a different column because we only care about state. So this time I want the sum if the policy is in Illinois. So in this case, my criteria range is now going to be column C. My criteria, I'm going to use the cell reference of Illinois. And then my sum range is going to, again, oh my gosh, be the amount. And then I'm going to close that parentheses, hit enter, and we should have 19. All right. Is there any question on SUMIF? Because if there are, all right, Matt?
Yes, I used the SUMIF function and I managed to get to the part where I go to the SUMIFs and if error data, but I got lost where you got everything else.
Absolutely. So let's do it one more time. So SUMIF. So the first thing it's going to ask for is your range, and that's your criteria range. So we're searching for state. So the first thing is going to be, we're going to select column C because that has the state data. So that's our criteria column. And then you're going to come back to this home tab and your criteria is going to be the Illinois. So that cell B6.
So I click the Illinois box.
Mm-hmm. And you could also use text there. You could also do like Illinois, but I just hate that. You can. Oh gosh, see, I really upset myself. And then lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to tell the sum range. So, comma, and then you're going to go in and select column E. And then you're going to close it with a parentheses.
Close it and I'm done.
Yep, and you should get 19.
I didn't get anything. Hold on.
All right.
Sum if sums a fur, I got this CC sum if and inferior B6.
For any items that we aren't getting answers for, I will be sure Emily and Kaylin to send you like the master file with all of the formulas worked out correctly, to where if there was any issues or any stumbles, everyone can work through it independently later, because it basically has all the answers. So
Wonderful, thank you.
no problem. All right. Anything else? Okay, so moving on, let's say that you want to know the total dollars for policies in Kansas City, but only if they're LTC policies. So you'll see here then, we have two criteria now that we're worried about. We're worried about the city and the policy type. So this is going to be a sum if, which just means multiple criteria. So when you go ahead and navigate into this, you're going to notice one sneaky little thing, and Excel is just a jerk for this. They switch your ranges. So you're no longer putting in your criteria range first, you're actually putting in your sum range. So it is nice that at least walks you through. So your sum range is going to be column E again. So this is our numeric dollar values that we're wanting to sum. And then it's going to ask for your criteria range, 1. So your first criteria range. In this case, it can be either the policy type or the city, whichever you want first. I'm going to do city just because. So I'm going to say sum everything in column E if in column D, and we're going to put a comma and hop back. If in column D, which is represents city, if that equals Kansas City. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the second set of criteria. So my second range is going to be policy type, and then a comma. And that's going to be LTC. So before I hit enter, just to recap, we've got our sum of, like our sum range of the data we're trying to summarize. This is going to represent our first criteria range. And we're saying only read items that have Kansas City. And then our second criteria range is going to be saying only read items for LTC if it also had Kansas City. So this is gonna, and I just exited out of my formula, so I'm gonna build it again so that gives everyone time. All right. All right. $8 is what everyone should have gotten. So this is saying it's summing all of the data if it's an LTC policy in Kansas City. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna flip real quick back to the PowerPoint. That's the bane of my existence. Let's see where we are. Okay. So the next thing we're gonna jump into is formula. And, oh, we got a question. Yes.
Yes, I got to the part of D to D. What did you click after that? You went too quickly. I'm sorry.
So yeah. So I encourage us also, as you're working through this, don't try to copy me, try to understand the formulas. So I'm going to try to translate into like thinking like Excel. So the first thing it's asking for is the sum range. So sum range is the total of the stuff you're looking for, dollars. Always think dollars. So that's going to be column E. So you're going to go ahead and click on column E. And that's going to tell Excel where to aggregate the data. And then the next feature is going to be criteria range 1. So this can be, you know, whichever of the criteria you want to start. So in this case, it can either, yeah, we can do B. So, and then Excel needs to know, okay, this is your criteria column, but what are you trying to basically match to? What am I looking for? So if you put a comma, we're looking for any policy that says LTC. So that's now my first criteria. And then next, it's going to ask, do you have any other parameters? And you can just keep going and going into like 20 different conditions if you want. So our second criteria range is going to be the city. So that's going to be column D. And again, you're just going to highlight that whole column. And then lastly, it's going to ask for the criteria that it's searching there. And that in this case is Kansas City. So you can go ahead and click column B10 and then close the parentheses and you should get to 8.
What?
All right.
It's telling me that I had too many arguments.
You're probably missing a comma. So make sure after every single thing you're entering, as far as like, you know, within the criteria, the formula, that you're breaking up everything with a comma. Otherwise, Excel can't read it correctly. That would be my guess of probably what that means.
No,
or maybe that you're missing an element.
No, I used a lot of commas. I don't think that's the problem.
All right, it is super hard to troubleshoot virtually, and I am so sorry for that. I would suggest playing around with it, making sure that your criteria ranges, so the range it's searching comes before your criteria. Otherwise, I can send you this afterwards and you can see the formula.
That would be great, thank you.
All right. So next part, we're gonna hop into nesting. So if error, this is a beautiful, beautiful function. And this can basically be used in conjunction with other formulas within Excel. And what this can kind of allow you to do is customize the data that you returned in a situation where your formula doesn't work. And that can sound kind of funky, but some common errors you might see. So if you get a ref error, that's going to mean that whatever cell reference you're using is invalid. Value, that's going to mean that the argument type within your formula is not structured correctly. And then NA, as we already saw, that means that the value is not found. So these situations can actually come up with like good data sets. And what I mean by that is, let's say I am summing up all of this data by state. And in my, daily check or whatever I'm doing, I have like a full list of states. And I basically just put a VLOOKUP in there and I'm, searching for the amounts. Well, in this case, Michigan doesn't actually exist in my list. So when I use a VLOOKUP, I'm going to get an NA. But let's say I know that. I just want a standard list where I can drag a formula down. And if Michigan doesn't exist, I just want it to say 0. You can actually use the if error and kind of customize what that return message will be. And what this allows for is like simplification of data sets, where you might be using a formula, dragging it across multiple like cells, and you want like a total. Well, if you have any of those errors, Excel is gonna laugh at you when you try to sum things. It can't read that. So in this situation, I actually use this workaround quite frequently when I'm trying to get a grand total of a formula value, and I know that that formula value will not always return something. So in this case, you can see that with using if error, I'm actually able to sum and get to 31. So we're actually going to do that in an example. So down here, so if error, so we're going to actually pivot your mind back to VLOOKUPs. It's just easier to build. So I say here, if error can be useful when using VLOOKUPs or any other formulas to find data that may or may not be included in the data set. So what I'm going to try to do here is look up this claim ABC 158, full well knowing that claim number doesn't exist in this data set. So I'm kind of doing it for a purpose here. So I'm going to say, hey, look up this value. You guys don't necessarily have to follow along here if you don't want to. I'm going to say search in column A and return me the value in column 5. And it's like, ABC 158 does not exist, does not compute, no data found here. But if you take the same VLOOKUP and you now nest it, which basically just means nestle within the if error. So it's going to ask first for a value, and a value, I mean, you can use this in a multitude of ways. In this situation, our value is actually going to be a VLOOKUP formula. So I'm going to be lazy and copy and paste that. So if error, so it's saying if this value comes back with an error, which it will, we know this, it's saying, what do you want me to say? So you'll see I just entered the value as my VLOOKUP, value if error. And in this situation, I mean, it can be anything. You can put in text, you can put in like, you know, a 0, like I did in my example on my slideshow. But you can also, like, if you want it to be really obvious for whatever you're doing, you can say, you know, if this comes back with an NA, like, say something to get my attention. So it can be like anything. So if errors, small but mighty feature, love them. Yeah, that's my plug. So if you're ever like working in a data set and getting frustrated with like not being able to cross-functionally use a formula, good way to kind of like standardize your return values. All right, any questions here?
Miranda, it looks like we have a request to repeat this one.
Yes, I sure can. All right, so I'm trying to think if I can do like a different example too. Well, yeah. Okay. So in this situation, let's say I'm being asked to find the total premium value of claim ABC 158. So here I built my VLOOKUP. So I'm going to VLOOKUP this claim number. So that's my lookup value, comma. And now I'm defining my table array. So that's going to be, since I'm looking for claim number, I'm starting here in column A, and I'm going all the way through column E. And I want it to return the total amount. So that is the 5th column. So that's going to be my number, so the column index number. And then we want an exact match. And as we know that claim does not exist, we're not going to get a value. However, if you wanted to alter how that's read, that's when you can use your if error. So if error, and it's going to ask you for a value. And this can be, I mean, it can be like, if you want anything, I think, to do like a different, oops, what did I do? Oh, I just realized it did something really dumb. Okay, so if error, you're gonna nest your value, which in this case, I'll rebuild the VLOOKUP. We're looking up this claim number in this table array. We're wanting to return the 5th column. Oops, did I? Well, I just did what I was telling people not to do and didn't put a comma in there. All right, lookup value. Table array, sorry guys. All right, and so what this is going to do is instead of saying NA, it is going to let me customize the value that it returns in the event of an error. So I often like to use 0 because if I work with a lot of number sets where I might be summing things and you cannot sum an NA. So this last portion is going to ask you what you want it to return if error. So I said 0, so it's returning a 0. All right. Okay. So we are actually on to our last exercise. I'm expecting this one to probably take the most time. So if we want to go through this one a few times, I'm more than happy to. This is definitely probably my sneakiest tool within Excel. It's a very, very useful nesting formula function to understand and know. So what an index match is, basically a VLOOKUP on steroids. It's really the combination of 2 functions that allow you to look up values in a table based off of both values in the rows and in the columns, or both at the same time. So unlike VLOOKUP, where it's looking vertically, there's also an HLOOKUP, which looks up horizontally. You can think of an index match as basically thinking both vertically and horizontally and pinpointing a value based on the parameters that you've set. Very fancy, very scientific. So we're going to work through this one at a time. So index match is really the combination of 2 independent formulas, index and match. In their simplicity, without being combined, they're pretty simplistic and unuseful in my opinion. But understanding how each of them works on their own is important into kind of troubleshooting and thinking how to build an index match. So on this last exercise tab, we're going to talk first about the index function. So the index function returns a value or the reference to a value within a given table or range. So for example, you can use the index function to tell Excel to read 5 columns to the right and 5 columns down, and it will do that and then give you that returned value. So that's basically what we're going to try to do here. So we're going to use the index function to find Q4 2017 segment B counts. And it's like this data set should look pretty familiar. of 2017 Q4 segment B. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to highlight this guy for you. So this is the number that we're trying to get our formula to return. And we know that the index is very simple and needs to be told the exact number of spaces to the right and down to count. So what we're going to do, we're going to start building it. So index, and first it's going to ask you for the array. And this is no different than in anything we've been doing. That is going to be your data set. So I'm just going to highlight from A1 all the way down, all the way over. So I'm highlighting the full data set, and this is important because the counts are very important. And so it's imperative to make sure that when we're building these formulas, we're referencing the same data set throughout, and that will make more sense as we keep going. But okay, so I've identified my array, and next it's going to ask for row number. So this is really Excel wanting you to count and feel really dumb. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We know that it is, am I doing that the wrong way though? Row number, column number. I am. Row number is going this way. Hello. So we want the data. Of course, this little guy is making it difficult. We want the data here. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we want the 5th row. And what column are we trying to return? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Happens that it's also 5 in this case. So you're literally telling Excel by count of cells what area to pinpoint and return that value. So like you can see, it's not very useful on its own. And you should get 16 of 89. So I'm going to do that one more time. So index, it's going to ask for the array. So that is your full data set. So highlight A1 through M10. Then you're going to comma. You're going to count the number of rows down that the value is that you want to return. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's your row number. And next it's going to ask for your column number. You're going to count the same way, which is also 5. Does that make sense to everyone? So what the index can do is, given a position, can return a value. Now, match is kind of the opposite. So the match function searches for a specific item in a range of cells and then returns the position of that item in the range. So I have a little example in here. If the range, A1 through A3 contains 3 values, 5, 25, and 38. So you can just think of 5, 25, 38 in a row. That's not weirdly formatted. And you take that formula and you say match, 25 as my lookup value in this range. It is going to return the number 2, which tells you that it is in the 2nd position of your defined range. So whereas the index, you have to tell the position for it to return a value. A match, you are asking it, you're basically inputting a value and asking it to give you the position. So that will make more sense once we build this. So we're going to use the match function to find the relative row position of segment B. So I'm going to go ahead and do match. Our lookup value, we can utilize this cell. So go ahead and click on it. So E19, and that says segment B. Your lookup array. And this is where it's, oh, well, won't matter yet, so never mind, I take it back. So your lookup array is going to be this column. So you can always think you're looking to find the position of segment B. So you're going to select the full column in A. And the reason I'm selecting even the blanks is because when we're later building our index match formulas, those blanks are going to be important. So that's why I'm factoring them in here, if in case you're wondering. So I have my lookup array, and then it's going to ask for match type, which I always do exact match, which is just the 0. And that's going to tell me 5. So this is telling me that segment B lies in the 5th row of my data set. And then I'm going to do the same thing for Q4 2017, except it's going to be the opposite way. It's going to be the column position. So here, I'm going to do my match. My lookup value is going to be Q4 2017. And this time, my lookup array is horizontally. So I'm looking for the quarter. And again, I'm going to start in that far left corner of A1, and I'm going to drag all the way down through M1. So it's now searching for Q4 2017 in this position. And I'm also going to do an exact match. And this should also be 5 for X. Okay, so a reminder, index, you are telling Excel the direct position of the value to return. Whereas with the match function, you are inputting a criteria, and then Excel is telling you the exact position that that criteria is met. So as I mentioned, these are kind of they're like helping each other. So if we actually combine these, what will happen is within the index formula, this part where you're actually identifying the specific number of 5 rows down and 5 columns in, you'll actually replace this with the match formula with specific parameters to where it becomes really dangerous and dynamic, and it makes fellow Excel nerds geek out. So we're going to go ahead and start building this. So combine index and match functions. Before I do this, though, I should pause. Any questions on index? Any questions on match independently? No, I'm seeing some nods. No, y'all are too smart. Okay. All right. So using both the index and match functions, we're going to solve for the intersection of segment B and Q4 2017. So basically, I want to know the dollar value that segment B produced in Q4 2017. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with our index. So go ahead and enter that. And it's going to ask, just like before, for your array. And so that's going to start in A1, just like before, and go through M10. And next, it's going to ask for your row number. And instead of typing in a physical number, this is where we're actually going to use the match formula. So if you start typing match, it'll highlight there. And we're basically going to do the same thing. So if you looked at our prior work, you could really copy and paste these together. So we're in the match now. It is now asking for our desired lookup value. So in this case, I'm going to do segment B. And I know that this is my vertical element. So, comma. And now it's asking for my lookup array. So here is where you want to make sure to always select the similar range of your original array. And don't get confused by big scary words here. It sounds way more confusing than it is. You just have to remember that Excel will not be able to read items if it is not the same height and length. So in this situation, we're searching vertically. And so Excel needs to basically align with the A1 to A10 element of our initial range. So I'm just going to highlight here. So I'm saying search for segment B in this data range, only if it's exact. I'm going to close that parentheses. Don't panic. We're going to do another comma. And now we are to our column reference. So this is the horizontal element. And I'm going to do this again. So if you're panicking that you got lost, don't worry. So now we're going to do another match. Never ends. I'm just going to ask you for your lookup value again. So I'm going to navigate back to my page here. And my lookup value is Q4 2017. My lookup array here, we're thinking horizontally. So we're going to start in A1 and go through M1. Match type, exact. And then you're going to close the parenthesis, and then you're going to need to add another parenthesis to close the original index. And what we should get, fingers crossed, is 1,689. Let's see if I did it right. Oh, yeah. Okay. So one clarifying thing before I go through this one more time. So my little comment about the ranges might have been confusing. So I like to think about, you're initially telling Excel the full data range, right? So we're initially saying, this is our data set from A1 to M10. And then when you come in with the different match parameter, so you're looking vertical, you're looking horizontal, I just did those the opposite way. You need to kind of speak to the length that you've already set, right? So in this case, we've identified the data sitting in this full range. But if I came through and for my vertical element, I said search in A2 to A10, it's going to go, that range does not equal what you originally set out, and I therefore cannot tell you what this means, and I'll show you that. So I'm actually going to come in and mess with one of these. I'm going to say start reading in A2, and it's giving me totally different results because these are based off of very defined counts. So now I'm getting bogus data because my counts are off. So that's one thing that's important to know. And I kind of do it. It was really confusing to me when I first started using these. And so my rule of thumb would be, I would always look back to my initial range that I set. And then I would look to my vertical and make sure that the number, so the count of rows, so 1 through 10, that matched. And then for the horizontal, that my actual columns, A through M, also matched, because that tells you that you're getting the same parameters. I know that might be confusing. Really bad at explaining that. Okay. So any initial questions I can answer? We're actually going to do it one more time with added functionality because we have about 30 more minutes. But if there's any initial questions I can answer, happy to do so right now. I know this is confusing. Nothing? All right. Okay. So we're going to take this a step further. And this would be a really good example of something that, a monthly workbook or something that I would be producing. Let's say my manager wants to see on a monthly basis, our financial results cumulatively for a few years. And so every month I have to come in, update the numbers, and I don't want to go through and manually aggregate, say, I just want to say like for Q4 2018, segment C, tell me how much money, and be able to kind of manipulate that to get the answers that I need. So we're going to create drop downs, and the way that you're going to do that is you're going to click into data, making sure. So I'm going to actually do them in these little blue boxes. So if you have that highlighted, you're going to click into the data bar up here, and you're going to use something called data validation, this very first one. And this can be super helpful if, you know, you're using a workbook that, you know, maybe you just have to update monthly. You want like a very controlled set of what people can select. This is a good way to do it. So allow, I'm going to say, get my values from a list. And it's going to ask you your source. So this is for, I'm creating a dropdown for the different programs. So I'm going to get my source data right from here. And I'm only going to select that data because I don't actually want program to show up as an option. So validation criteria is going to be a list, and then my data source for the programs. And I'm going to hit OK. And then what you're going to see is a handy little dropdown. So now you can kind of just go through and select, real handy, cool. And then we're going to do the same thing for quarters and for years. So go ahead and do that. And you're probably wondering why I'm doing this, and it's because we can actually now utilize these drop downs to be the inputs into our index match, where the formula becomes so easy to update. And I will show you what I mean. So, oops, it's formatted funky. Okay. Everyone clear on the drop downs? Is there any confusion there? Okay. All right. So we're going to go through the same thing as building this function, or this formula again. And for consistency's sake, I'm going to actually use the same parameters. All right. So this time, instead of using these little orange boxes as our inputs, we're just going to use these as our inputs, no different. So starting off with the index, it's going to ask the same thing. It's going to ask for your array. You're going to have that memorized in your sleep, A1 through M10. And next, it's going to ask for your row number. So remember, this is where we're going to put in our first match to count vertically. So in this case, our vertical value here is segment B. So instead of clicking this one like I did, I'm just going to click here. So I'm saying search for match segment B, and my lookup array is in A1 through A10, comma, exact match, which is just a 0. And then I'm going to close that parenthesis. And then if you put another comma, you're going to see it's going to pop up and it's going to ask you for your column number, which we're also going to replace with a match formula. So match. And now, ooh, I just tricked myself. We're going to have to concatenate these. I really did it. I'm going to cheat. 1 second. I need to open up my master file to make sure that I'm not leading you guys astray. If anyone can figure this out before me, you get a lot of cred. Okay. All right. Gonna get back to where I was. Sorry about that. So what I was saying is you can actually see that those drop downs are two separate inputs off of one horizontal column here. So what that's going to mean, let me get back to where I accidentally deleted my formula. Segment B, we're searching here. Okay. So for our second match, our lookup value is going to be Q4, and, so you're physically going to put in the and sign, a parenthesis, space parenthesis, I'm going to explain it in a minute, another ampersand, so another and, 2017. So what that is actually going to do is it's going to tell Excel to read Q4 space 2017. And that's in the same formatting that is in our data set. And if you didn't put the parenthesis, space parenthesis, it would just mash them together. And so it wouldn't actually read the same as we have the data formatted. So our input value in this case is looking horizontally for anything that matched as Q4 2017. And our lookup array is going to be the same thing here. Gonna do comma exact match, close the parenthesis, close it one more time, and hope I did it right. All right, so as you can see, we got the same result. But the really cool thing is now is that let's say your manager is like, Miranda, I really want to know segment D Q4 2017. Now, instead of building a new formula, you can just come through and change the dropdown, which the formula is reading off of, and it will give you the different values. So segment E, let's say I want to know Q3 2017, it will update that. So this is a really good way, if you can get comfortable with index matches, a really good way to kind of format your formulas to be extremely interactive, and where you don't really have to spend time recreating them. All you're doing is adding to the data set, refreshing your drop downs if needed, and then editing those to get your values. Index match. All right, I know I just threw a lot at you. We have about 30 minutes left. Happy to take any questions. Anything where I lost you here? Go for it. Nothing. Oh, I answered everyone's questions. All right. So close, further resources. I did link to a few within the PowerPoint, but really, when all else fails, use Google. I basically taught myself Excel through Googling very specific questions. It's very helpful. If there's a situation where you think you can't build a formula, I bet you someone out there has. So just getting good enough at Googling the right terms will normally get you the support that you need. But yeah, definitely use Excel. If you're not doing your homework in Excel, do your homework in Excel. It's great. I use it every single day, and there's no hiding from it in the financial industry. So that kind of wraps up everything that I had formally. Guess we'll just turn it back to Emily and Kaylin, if you guys had any closing remarks, any last minute questions.
Thank you so much, Miranda. And thank you also to Denise, Ethan, and Tristan for all of your help. This was super comprehensive. We really appreciated it. I feel like I learned, my brain got a little bit unlocked to Excel today. So I really appreciate that.
Good.
Yeah, so thank you.
And then,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I will go ahead and forward my master version with all of these formulas solved to both of you, who then can distribute to.
Perfect. I think you might have cut out a little bit, Miranda, your audio.
No.
There you are. You're back.
Oh, weird. Okay. I was just saying, so if there was a spot that you were lost, don't panic. Emily or Kaylin will send those out.
Yes, so we'll be uploading that to our Career Center YouTube. So we'll hopefully have that, by the end of the day, hopefully today, potentially tomorrow, but we'll send that to all those who've registered. And yes, we really appreciate all this really helpful content. I'm sharing a quick evaluation. If you all don't mind filling this out, it'll take, about 10 seconds. And yeah, we are so excited to be launching this summer programming for BEC, for the Business Entrepreneurship and Consulting Career Community. And we're having another program next week on Tuesday at noon for Meet the Firms prep. So any accounting and finance people, this is super relevant for you. Meet the Firms will be held virtually this year on September 15th and 16th. And the webinar is at 12 noon, and you can register for that on a Handshake. So.
And as an alum, plug, definitely do Meet the Firms, especially if it's virtual. That's so much less intimidating.
Yeah.
Meet the Firms is honestly one of the most amazing things that DePaul puts on, and really gives you the advantage of getting in front of a lot of people, normally even CNA. So yeah, definitely a good event. Well, thank you all so much. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out via email. Max, yeah?
Yes, from this point going forward, is it possible for any of us to connect with any of you guys one-on-one to discuss anything regarding Excel we were confused about?
Yeah, so yeah, when I send the answer sheet over to Emily and Kaylin, I will also include my email. So if any of you have questions, I'm happy to send resources, set up some quick chats, whatever may be, to help you better understand Excel.
Excellent. Just wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Everyone will get that email through their individual email accounts, correct?
Yes. So whatever email that you have on Handshake, that's what we'll be sending the emails to.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Miranda. You were fantastic.
All right.
Really
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You guys were all fantastic.
Thank you, Max. Thank you. All right. Hope to see you all again soon. Have a great rest of your evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hope you all have a good day now. Bye.
Thanks, Max. All right, it looks like everyone's voted.
Diogo, I just saw your message that seeing if somebody can help you with the last part.
Yes, sorry, just the data validation that I missed.
Okay, so I would suggest once we send out the email to message her, and she will be able to kind of help you at that point.
Okay.
Or we'll also send out the master workbook, so you might be able to even identify something in there of where you might have made a mistake.
Okay. Thank you very much, you all.
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.